Hello everyone, on today's episode of You Probably Aren't Actually Pro 2A, we're talking about whether or not felons should or shouldn't be able to own firearms. There's a whole lot of caveats to this, a whole lot of topics to go about, but the reason I'm actually talking about this today, which is a topic I've previously spoken on before, is because the Firearms Policy Coalition has actually got a potential case going to the Supreme Court, which could challenge the lifetime ban for any felon from being able to own a firearm. There's a whole lot to go on with this. I'm going to give you kind of a brief idea of what the case is actually talking about, and then I'm going to kind of give my opinion on why I think felons should be able to own firearms, or why I think the idea of blanket banning all people who have ever been convicted of a felony from ever being able to own a firearm is wrong, and why, if you think they shouldn't ever be able to own a firearm as a blanket ban, why that means you're actually not pro 2A. Before we get into it though, I gotta say thank you to the sponsor of this channel, Franklin Armory. Huge supporters of me, huge supporter of the state of California when it comes to guns, gun rights, and what we can and cannot get. They're going above and beyond and working within the laws to get us firearms that are actually suitable for defensive use. I also want to say, hey, check out our merch, shallnotcomply.com. If you get anything on there, check it out. There's a couple other cool creators as well. Johnny B, Pew Pew Tactical, and Tactical Considerations, as well as my own line. We're going to have some new designs coming up in the future, so go ahead and check that out. Thank you. By the way, if you hear some sort of like whirring or squeaking sound, or just fan noise in general, normally that's not the case if you're new to this channel. I have my 3D printer up and running right now, and I'm working on some stuff following all gun laws, because gun laws are really good to follow. Holloway2acase.com. This is the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is their news briefing. They also have a site. I'm going to have both these links down below. This is the important case filings and various news releases and whatnot. This case originally started back in 2018, and now on the 3rd of December in 2020, we have a petition for certiorari. I am not going to be able to pronounce most legal words correctly. I'm not a lawyer, so don't expect me to pronounce things right. It looks like they actually filed today asking the Supreme Court to potentially take this case up. This could be huge, so let's read this little briefing. Today, Firearms Policy Coalition and FPC Law announced the filing of a petition for certiorari asking the United States Supreme Court to hear the case of Holloway versus Barr. The petition and other recent filings can be viewed at, and I got a link to that in the description. Mr. Holloway was convicted of a non-violent misdemeanor nearly 2 decades ago and has been law-abiding ever since, but he is nevertheless prohibited by federal law from possessing a firearm for the rest of his life. FPC argued in the petition that the court should hear the case because the lifelong ban violates his Second Amendment rights, and to further clarify the field of the Second Amendment law. Now, this appeal comes from the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, so not the Ninth Circuit like many people in California are familiar of, where over a strong 37-page dissent, Judge Fisher, the panel majority, upheld the ban on Holloway. The majority departed from the Supreme Court's 2008 Heller opinion by ignoring the text of the Constitution as well as the history and tradition that informs its original public meaning. Instead, the court applied an ahistorical test that allows people to be disarmed if they lack virtue. The Third Circuit reversed the decision of the district court, which had ruled in Holloway's favor. The Supreme Court has made it clear that in evaluating Second Amendment challenges, a court must interpret this amendment's text in light of the history and tradition of the founding era. At no point throughout American history until just recently would someone like Mr. Holloway forfeit his right to keep and bear arms. We're optimistic that the court will accept our case, clarify the historical scope of the right, and restore Holloway's rights. The notion that a person's constitutional right can be forfeited based on the arbitrary present-day label or sentencing range assigned to a non-violent violation of the law is truly disturbing. One state's otherwise innocuous decision to lump together a range of driving offenses and allow a judge to sort out the minor offenses from the more serious ones should not be the basis for treating even the minor offenses as a ground for forfeiting constitutional rights. Basically, they're saying the system in place that we have now, any law that convicts you of a felony, things like tax evasion, things like a DUI that was over 15 years ago that was non-violent, random crimes that are considered felonies, and I'm sure if you look at the Twitter account, I think it is a crime a day or something like that, or felony a day, it lists various things that are against the law. There's a ton of crimes out there that under no circumstance would be someone's dangerous, or that someone has some sort of ill intent, that they would be so dangerous that we should debar them from owning guns. This is a really interesting conversation because you can technically get your gun rights back as a felon if you have it reduced to a misdemeanor and then expunged. However, if you have a felony just expunged, typically you can't get your gun rights back, which is kind of interesting because if we allow these people to walk freely amongst us, why are we keeping them from being able to own guns? If they have paid their debt to society, they've done their time, they're now a free person, why should they not be able to defend themselves? And also, if they are so dangerous that we think they should not have guns, why are we letting them walk out amongst us? In my personal opinion, if you were to say, hey, this person has been determined so dangerous that if they were in possession of a firearm, that would be a major danger to us and everyone, and maybe even themselves. Why would we be letting that person out walk freely amongst us where they could get access to any number of dangerous items like a vehicle, which we still allow them to have? If you think that a person that has been convicted of a felony has done their time and is now a free man or a free woman or a free person, whatever it is you want to call yourself, they are a free person in the United States. The only way for us to make it so that they cannot have firearms, which this doesn't actually work, but the only way in theory to keep them from owning that firearm is by having both universal background checks and a complete searchable firearms registration of every firearm in the nation. The only way that we could keep a felon or some prohibited person from actually having a gun and making sure that we could actually potentially keep them from having a gun would be through a wide scheme of gun control. So if you're saying that you think that they shouldn't and it should be illegal for them to do that, you're saying that you agree with the ways that would be required to enforce that and make that happen. Here's what it would take to actually keep a criminal from getting a gun. We would have to find every single firearm in the United States. We would have to find them all. We would have to have them registered to a specific person. We would then have to institute background checks nationally at a federal level, ending all private sales. We would have to have a searchable registration so that someone could actually just look up that firearm in a database and then know every single person that has owned that firearm and where it is supposed to be and whose possession it's supposed to be in. This would end loaning a gun to a friend. In the state of California, that's also already illegal. It would also mean that you would have to get rid of the technology like CNC machines, 3D printers, basic hand tools. You would have to get rid of Home Depot, because anybody that knows a thing or two and can look up P.A. Luddy's book would be able to know that you can get firearms where firearms are otherwise non-existent. So there is no way to truly keep these people from owning guns, so why do we? Why are we continuing to have these people be second-class citizens? Ultimately, I think that this is a potentially good case if the Supreme Court decides to take it. I think there's a pretty good chance that they could take it, seeing as in the most previous round where we had 10 cases that were denied, we didn't really have the majority that we needed. We had enough judges, in theory, on the gun control ending side, or on our side, to accept it, but it was most likely going to go against us in the gun grabbers' favor, 5-4. Now it's looking like a 5-4 in our favor, a potential 6-3, but realistically more like 5-4 in our favor if this actually gets taken up. So I'm very hopeful. I would love to see a world where people that are not dangerous, are not violent, are not a threat, and are free people can own guns. Because currently, let's say you got busted for pot back in the day when it was super illegal and you had a felony charge for distribution or just for having a bunch of plants and you weren't actually distributing. You could be considered a felon and you would not be able to own guns. Are you a bad person? No. In fact, many states, you can do that now. So for these states that have laws like this, it really doesn't make sense, especially for us, like in California. There's so many things that someone could be a felon for, pay their debt to society, and be a perfectly good person, but there's no real way for them to actually get their gun rights back. And hopefully this paves the way for more people no longer being second-class citizens and having the tools to protect themselves and their families. You know the drill. Have fun, be safe, stay dangerous. Peace. I think in December or on December 1st, I'm going to be giving away a 3D printer. They're not super loud, but the way my mic works, you're probably hearing a little bit of hissing noise. I'm thinking about giving away an Ender 3 Pro, something like that, but the details have not been entirely worked out yet. I'm going to be giving it away to people in my subscribe star. Doesn't matter what tier. Don't hold me on the exact date and what specifics we're going to go with, because it's going to depend on availability. I'm probably going to talk to some people, but that's an idea that I have as of right now. So if that's the only reason you're thinking of signing up, don't do it just yet. Wait till I have more information. Wait till I got all the details ironed out. Thank you, everyone.